Well, it happened. Danny Ainge has stepped down as president of. It's the end of an era. I know an LA fan, and I texted them the link to a tweet that said he stepped down and said end of an era. It sucks. It sucks. I don't like it. But ultimately, it's his decision. And like he was quoted as saying, since that heart attack, it just hasn't been as fun, especially with the pandemic and everything, and I get it. But it's still sad to see him go. And sometimes I like to call him the trade finesse guy. He's gone. And now we've got a big situation. Who is the next head coach? We've heard rumors that potential candidates are guys like Chauncey Billups, Jason Kidd. But in the end, it all depends on who's put in that spot. And Brad Stevens is moving from his head coaching role to lead the Celtics basketball operations, and he's aiding to finding his successor. Great. This will be fun. My thing about this is a lot of people are giving Danny Ainge a lot of flack for recently. First of all, we've got to remember some of the stuff he's done. And you've also got to remember, this is kind of, he put a lot of youth in place for the last couple seasons. You've got to admit that. He's tried to go with the youth movement. It's starting to have a bit of potential. Romeo Langford had one of his best games one of his better games in Game 5. One of the best of the season, probably. And from players' perspective, they said it's been one of his best games this season. And you've got guys like Robert Williams, whom Tristan Thompson said he would train or help take that next step. And you've got so much youth. Grant Williams, Peyton Pritchard, Aaron Nesmith. Guys that I'm like, if they got the right guys backing them up and they can take that next step, I like this team, especially with what they did against a stacked Nets team with just Jason Tatum and Marcus Smart. Game 4 wasn't really close, but look what they did in Game 5 without Kemba, without Jaylen Brown, without Robert Williams. They kept within 5 at the end of each quarter, I'm pretty sure. Kept it close at the end of each quarter. They didn't do what they did in Game 4. They stepped up, performed well, and they could have won that game. I've got a lot to talk about on the podcast, and there's a lot of stat lines I want to get into, but I'm saving them for later this week. For a Fighter from 3, because I really want to talk about him there. But there's so much that's happened this season that I'm like, the future, if it pans out, looks brighter than ever. I mean, you can argue that there's been a lot of depth pieces that have moved young guys like Rozier, Tice. That's just Wanamaker, but I can see why. I can see Tice more than the others, but you can't blame them for not being able to kind of make up what they've done, or kind of make a good center spot. But they've tried. You've got to admit, they've tried. They brought in Tristan Thompson. They moved Tice because he wasn't really taking the most of a next step. You've got Grant and Robert Williams, who Robert's better than Grant, but still they've done good this season as depth pieces. Robert actually I think he's gotten some starts. But it's about the wider outlook. And I look at this move a lot differently than other people. I'm hearing it a lot of like, they just see what he's done recently and just like, yeah, bye. And I'm like, well, he's done so much that I'm going, we can't forget that this guy's done this much, and recency bias is just killing his reputation. Because we got to remember, he's made some deals. The Isaiah Thomas move. Because hasn't he been he's been a journeyman since he came out of Boston. And you got to think, they've been kind of through a rebuild recently. And they were in a rebuild, I'd say, in the early 2010s. After that run that they ran into LA and lost in the finals, they rebuilt. They had a good core. It just didn't work out. They tried again. Now you've got a lot of young guys set into this team. And let me just note, Jason Tatum was one of 11 guys that I don't remember the exact stat line, but he's done some crazy things in the playoffs. Oh, that averaged above, it was either 30 or 40, I think it was 30. 30 points through a playoff, or through the playoff, or either a playoff series or the playoffs in general. And you've got to admit, this team has a bright future behind Smart. Wow. I'm not exactly sure how old Smart is. But Brown, Tatum, if Robert Williams can develop, if Grant Williams can develop, if Langford can develop, if Pritchard can develop, Nesmith, those guys, if they take that next step, if they take a couple steps forward and they get into a good position, wow, this is going to be great. This is going to be awesome. But I like the kind of attitude Brad Smith does have, or Brad Smith. I don't know why I said Brad Smith. Brad Stevens. I've been all over the place today. It's been a mix of emotions today, so I'm a little disoriented still from this move. But Brad Stevens, I don't necessarily like the move just because it's Danny Ainge going, but I like his attitude of it's a new challenge. I kind of like how he's approaching it from the thought perspective, but it's all really about what he can do. And I'm hoping him the best. I'm hoping Danny Ainge the best. And I'm hoping everybody in general the best in this organization with the new moves. But it'll be interesting to see who's the next successor. I'm just really worried about what could happen and who. It all depends on who they bring in and how players can develop in the future and what Stevens really has to do, because I think he's going to keep this core together and he's just going to add what it needs. I think that's all you've got to do is get someone in who can help develop players, and then you just bring in the pieces that you need to help get this team a little bit further, and that's it. That's all you need. That's all it is. That this team could be set in motion if everything goes right. In the past couple seasons, everything hasn't gone the greatest. But who expected us to make a run against the Nets, or at least have chances to win games multiple times? This is a 2-seeded Nets that's got Kevin Durant, Joe Harris, Kyrie, and who am I missing? Harden. I keep thinking he's on the Rockets. It's been a while since that trade, but it's just he was there for so long. But anyways, who expected a team that's down Jaylen Brown and at the end of the series down Kemba Walker and and Robert Williams, and who's had a team that just didn't shoot in the playoffs compete? Who would have expected that? Not me. I didn't expect it. I don't think anybody else expected it. Because, hold on, let me look at the scores again for the games. But I do remember it. Okay, I've got the scores. So, come on. So, game 4, they kind of let off at the end, but I know they were within 10 for the first 3 quarters. Now, look at game 3. They were within 6. They were within 10. Game 1, within 10. Game 4, 15. But through the first 3 quarters, no, that game wasn't. That game they actually caught up in the fourth quarter. But game 5, they were within 10 for the first 3 quarters. That tells you all you need to know about the Celtics team. I mean, when you get into the playoffs, seeds don't matter. Records don't matter. Player necessarily who's your depth players necessarily don't matter who they are, as long as they show up to play. And I think from what I've heard about, apparently Tatum's going to be hungrier and Kemba's going to be more motivated because he wasn't there and all this stuff. It's like, if you can show me that you're going to do this next year, I'm confident in what you guys can do and who takes the next step. If Grant will, or if Robert, Nesmith, Pritchard, Langford, if those guys and everybody else can take that next step, I'm scared of what this team could be able to do, especially with Tatum. But anyways, I wanted to get something quick out. I also wanted to do it to the point where I didn't get angry, loud, and yelling, because I did earlier today, like twice, not recording, just kind of thinking the situation. So I'm glad I kept myself calm and collected for the most part. But anyways, this has been a quick 12-minute video just to kind of get my thoughts out there. I didn't want to do an emergency podcast. I didn't think there was enough there. But anyway, just to talk about. But anyways, I will see you soon.